with your host Sana, listeners, where we explore the art of conscious living, healing, and growth. Now, listeners, today we are diving deep into something which I personally connect with: abundance and receptivity. How to truly open to more of what life wants you to do, be, and have. So, today's guest is Keri Nola. She's widely known as the Shadow Mama and holder of the Healers. Beautiful names, right, listeners? So, stay tuned for a conversation that just might transform how you welcome life's blessings. So, Keri, welcome to the show, and it is such a pleasure having you with us today.
I'm so thrilled to be here, Santa. Thank you for having me.
Beautiful, beautiful. Kerry, before we start with discussing on the topic, I mean, if it's okay with you, would you like to share a bit of your journey? What kind of motivated you to get into what you are doing right now, and to explore abundance and receptivity?
Absolutely. So, my journey started as a little girl, always knowing that I wanted to help people. And I didn't know how that would look at that age or stage. But I remember as young as like 3, 4, 5 years old, talking about wanting to help. And I thought at points I might be a teacher. I thought I might do something in healthcare. And once I knew what a therapist was, I quickly knew that that would be my path or the way that my path would begin. So I took a traditional route and became a licensed psychotherapist in the States and had a beautiful career for over a decade owning a holistic wellness center where I helped people move through complex trauma and grief. And I absolutely loved that expression of healing. I was good at it. My clients were healing, and I thought I would do that until I was old and gray, except the universe had other plans for me, but I was quite stubborn and wasn't listening to those whispers and those calls on my life path to shift direction. So I actually got really sick. And for a few years, I was very ill and nobody could figure out what was wrong. And I felt like I was dying. I was having heart palpitations and incredible pain and couldn't get up off the floor at certain points. And I remember one of my spiritual teachers saying, Carrie, you are dying, but it's not a physical death. It is an identity death. It is an ego death. You're dying to who you thought you were and what you've been doing because there's something new coming. And that planted a seed for me to listen more closely. And I very quickly discovered that I was being asked to retire from my career as a traditional psychotherapist and move across the country and transition into helping the healers and the helpers to be well so that they could share their work and their creations and their medicine in the world. And one of the things that healers tend to struggle with the most is their ability to receive. They're very good at giving, they're constantly giving and sharing and helping. But when it comes to letting themselves have what is meant for them, there's often a struggle. So I found that spot where they needed help, and it was easy for me. There was an effortlessness, and that's what I've been doing for the past nearly decade is helping the helpers.
Wow, that's so beautiful. Helping the helpers,
Hmm.
and
Thank
yeah, you pointed such a right. This dilemma within which kind of, yes, is an identity uh, death that it happens especially in the service roles. And I'm really curious to know, Kerry, why do you think so many of helpers or healers, they struggle with receptivity? Is it due to an ingrained subconscious belief that receiving is selfish or weak, or is it something the society or externally it is not a rewarding role?
Absolutely. I think it's a combination of all of those things, and then some. So I think people who are drawn to be helpers and healers often
Mhm.
don't know how to let life in for themselves. They're so over focused. There's an out of balance. It's just kind of the constitution I've seen with people who are here to help in that very traditional sense. Oftentimes they learn from family and friends early on that this is their role. They are here to do this and they've often been malnourished either emotionally, physically, mentally, spiritually. And so it's something that they've gotten used to, and it's just a way of being for them. And so they come into this field that also has a collective consciousness of subconscious beliefs that says you have to be accessible, you have to be available to help the people that need you. So when you're charging for that help, that becomes problematic if people can't afford it. So it all kind of works together to where it's creating this challenge of how do I give and receive harmoniously, and something that a lot of people really suffer with.
Hmm. Yeah, that really, really makes sense. And Kerry, you work closely with the healers and entrepreneurs to help them clear scarcity blocks. So, what's one practice or a mindset shift that, in fact, listeners can start using today to begin rewiring their relationship with abundance?
Well, the first thing is understanding where your block lives. So I love to do an exercise where you think of the word money and you write down all of the words or phrases that come to mind when you think of that. And then you go back and you put a plus sign by the ones that feel expansive and have a more positive connotation, and a minus sign by the ones that are more contracting or negative in nature. And that will give you an idea of where you're starting at, right? What parts of you feel connected and safe with money, and which parts of you may feel disconnected and less safe with money. Now, the parts of you that feel great about it, they don't need your help. They're doing fine. But the parts that are struggling, that's where we need to take a look. So, one of the common ones that tends to come up is that money feels distant, or it feels like greedy or selfish. Uh, yeah, it's one of the jokes I make is for people who know on social media, when you want to write about your relationship status on social media, one of the choices is it's complicated. And so I
Yeah.
often joke that people have a complicated relationship with money. And
Mhm.
it often links with how we were relating to our caregivers growing up. So I'll take something like, you're never there for me, money. Like I notice money is scarce, it's not around a lot. And then I would invite you to ask, did you have the experience of a caregiver not being around a lot? Because what that imprints in us is that we can't count on our provider to take care of us. And that often gets projected onto money because it's an unhealed wound that we need to look at. And I wish this healing was quick and easy, but this is one step. It's a starting place, but it really takes time to unwind these patterns. And that's why, yes, you can do aspects of this alone, but working with a mentor or guide who can really help show you your blind spots and walk you through these places is really important, because it's not just as simple as trying to think something new. It often requires like rewiring very complex subconscious patterns that have been there for a really long time, often generationally. A lot of money blocks start with being inherited from our family of origin, what our parents' relationship was with money. And that was often passed down to them by their parents and down the line. So there's a lot of layers when we're doing this kind of work.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, a lot of it is generational and passed down through family because and I come from a background where I saw my parents saving up and nurturing money to make sure that I get a good um, life. I
Mm.
get to study in a good school, good college. But at the same time, Kerry, there were a lot of expectations riding on me to
Yes.
prove that whatever they're deciding for me is good.
Yes.
Uh yeah, and in the long run, overall, yes, it obviously is right. But somehow, somewhere down the line, still like feels, a burden, something like a burden. And that kind of, made me conscious in terms of money because um I used to think a few years back that this is something which will give me all the comfort and, a really great lifestyle. But then gradually when I started to grow up and deal with a lot of situations, then I thought, do I actually need all of these, and then also sacrificing myself, my health, my family, my parents. So that really, really took me to a very dark place to, kind of analyze things from
Yes.
an abundance and a scarcity point.
Absolutely. I think I'm so glad you brought this up. I call this expensive money. Sometimes, even when we have money, we're not really experiencing abundance because abundance is our relationship with the enoughness of life. That's what I refer to as that. It's so much more than money. So, you might have money in the bank, but how healthy are you? How connected are you to your family and to activities and experiences that matter to you? So it's not just one or the other. And oftentimes people struggle with letting themselves have goodness in all of the categories. Like if they're doing well financially, then maybe they believe they have to suffer in a relationship or with health. Or maybe if their health gets really good, then they begin to suffer financially or in relationship. It's like these three categories that we are all worthy of having coherence and wellness in, we at some level tend to believe we have to pick between. Like we have to suffer somewhere. So which place is it going to be? And we usually pick up threads of that from our family and seeing, what's the way of being that is acceptable. And it's beautiful as we start to break those generational patterns and begin to introduce new ways of being and work through little by little so that we don't pass these things down and we do get to experience generational wealth, not only financially, but relationally and health wise as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. In fact, I'm the one who has kind of broken that chain because still till this date, Kerry, my dad sometimes he's not able to even fully accept that um, I'm not in a full time, that traditional job or work.
Yeah.
Uh, I mean, I'm kind of that odd one out, but
I really relate to that, Santa. When I started my therapy practice, I remember I went into it not working on Fridays. I chose that Friday was going to be my self care day. And my parents, both, beautiful people and providers, my dad was an entrepreneur himself. They were like, "Wait, what do you mean you're taking Friday off? You haven't even started your career yet. What have you earned that yet?" And I just looked at them and said, "It has to be this way. I'm not going to burn myself out by overworking. This is important to me, and I'm going to start with these healthy decisions as opposed to having to repair the damage that this does later on." And I think it was a combination of just shock and surprise. They were proud of me, but they didn't even know it was an option. It didn't ever occur to them that you could choose something like that, and it was so obvious to me, based on my inner healing and the studying that I had done, that we're not victims of our schedule or our lifestyle. We're constantly making choices that are creating the experience that we're having. And we get to make new choices that create a new experience and bring liberation to these patterns and ways of being that aren't effective or efficient or creating goodness for us.
Exactly. Exactly. But then also, I would like to bring another perspective here, Kerry.
Sure.
What I think is I still have that privilege to take this decision because it is something which I didn't suddenly take. I calculated things, I understood the circumstances, and then I decided, okay, for me, there is an option. But then for people, you know, who are struggling with real life financial hardships, we have seen this during pandemic, post pandemic. In fact, I also went through a layoff. I really, really struggled at that time. um, so what's your response to skeptics who would say that abundance teachings, they kind of overshadow or minimize or maybe oversimplify complex struggles?
Well, I'm right there with you. It's very nuanced, right? And my audience tends to, if someone is having access to listening to a podcast and they're entrepreneurs and they're in these healing realms, typically they might feel scarce, but they are probably less scarce than they actually think. Most of them still have a roof over their head. Most of them still have food on the table. So most of my teachings are uh, based on that reality, and that's where I'm coming from. But certainly, that's why the definition of abundance that I said earlier is it's journeying with the enoughness of life. So it's not making money responsible for our happiness or our joy. It's noticing what do we have and how can we be in relationship with that by still letting ourselves want more and open to more. And obviously, this is a really complex conversation. We're not going to, heal starving and, big world problems with this. Um, but yeah, that's what I would say. It is complex, it is nuanced, and people are really struggling and suffering, and everyone has the power to relate to their circumstances from a place of empowerment and to yeah, be in right relationship with the journey that their soul is on. And it's different for all of us.
Absolutely, it's more of a mindful healing. uh,
Yes.
yeah. Great, great, Kerry. And also, I believe this is such a beautiful question. How do you differentiate between forcing an outcome, like manifesting from the ego that I have to do this, I have to let this happen, I have to, at any cost, I have to get this done, versus staying open to divine alignment and letting abundance flow naturally?
Mm. I love the way you worded that. I would call that process and practice mature manifestation. It's not just what I want or what I prefer. It's getting into connection with what is for me. And I think I heard Tosha Silver, a beautiful spiritual teacher, say this for the first time. And it was asking the question of God, divine, source, what would you have me have? What would you have for me? And it's when we can fall in love with what is wanted for us that we start to feel truly fulfilled. And you can feel into whether or not you're in touch with a more egoic desire or a soul desire by how fulfilled you are when something is manifest into physical reality. So a lot of times we think we want X amount of money or a particular job or a particular material item or even an experience. But then when we have it, it's like on to the next thing, wanting something else, but it didn't really satisfy that need. So we begin to discover that the wanting of these things, we think it's the thing that we want, but really there's something underneath or inside that desire that we're really trying to experience. A lot of times that's a sense of safety or enoughness or accomplishment or success. So it gets a little bit tricky. So, whenever you think that you want something, I would invite you to ask yourself, one, how come? What do I think having this would do for me? Or how would it help me to be of greater service or in a better position to, be a human being on this planet? And secondly, is this what source would have for you? And when you can feel into that and make that a practice to be asking that every time you are intending to welcome something in your reality or you're working so hard for something, it will really begin to reorient you to the things that will be most deeply fulfilling in a sustainable way. Because not everyone is meant to have the same things. We're not all meant to be millionaires. We're not all meant to be entrepreneurs. We're not all meant to everyone's soul came here to experience something different. So we want to touch in with what is that for you?
Exactly. Exactly. That definitely needs a bit of a self-awareness as well
Very much.
for realization.
Yeah.
Because, this question, so when I was in my job or, work phase, I used to see, so, post pandemic, there were so many people who were turning to become solopreneurs or entrepreneurs, working hard, working 14 hours, uh, understanding the basics of business. But then I asked someone this question: Are are you satisfied with this work life, or you also would like to become an entrepreneur? And I really loved the way he answered that. I love the way I'm working. This is something which is fulfilling me. I consciously do not want to be an entrepreneur because I know I may not be a good fit for that.
Yes.
So, it kind of, helped me also analyze that whether I am in that position to decide or not. And there's one thing I also would like to share, Kerry, regarding the divine alignment. So, um, there was another episode I just recorded this week on another podcast of mine, which is Cosmic Confluence. And um, my guest she's an retired elementary school teacher, 27 years. She traveled from the States to Mexico. And now she's trying to bring a mindfulness curriculum for Gen Zs to help them navigate the complex times of today and build a better earth. So she shared with me a very beautiful thing that when she first brought up that particular curriculum and with the students, she didn't get a good response. It was a really, really lukewarm response. But she didn't still give up because she said to me that I am doing my job, I am doing my work, and I have left it upon the universe to get the rest of the work done. So
Yes.
it's with the divine, that let them do the work. I'm doing my job. That really, really touched me. Really touched me. So
That's such a beautiful example of this. It's, not always our work is not always going to be well received or someone might not get it, but it doesn't mean that it's still not true to do it. So we have to sometimes have the ability to be uncomfortable or disliked or wait for the world to catch up to what we're creating because we might be ahead of our time or offering something that there's a little bit of resistance to at first, but it doesn't mean it's the wrong thing. And that's why our relationship with ourselves and our heart and soul and our inner knowing is so important because otherwise we're outsourcing that to people that really have no business making the decisions on our behalf because they're not their decisions to make.
absolutely. Lovely, Kerry. Lovely. So before we wrap up this beautiful conversation, if our listeners would like to connect with you, what's the best way to do that?
Sure. All of the things are on my website at kerinola.com. I have a free download, a money date journal that is a powerful practice to really deepen into what we started talking about here today. And would love to connect with anyone that is feeling resonance with my support and message.
Great. I'll make sure to have all the links and details in the show notes. And Kerry, I really love how you weave both the practical and the mystical together because it is so grounding. And personally, I think I know our listeners, they're probably going to reflect on this too. So thank you so much for sharing your journey, your wisdom, and your energy with us today.
You're so welcome, Santa. Thank you so much for having me and for the thoughtful questions to help us go deeper.
So, listeners, I hope you're walking away today with fresh insights on how to soften, receive, and also step into your own abundant flow. Until next time, keep living mindfully and stay open to life's infinite gifts. Thank you.